I want to talk about destabilization tactics. Because I've spent a lot of time in Olympia, because I know like a lot of punks and anarchists and stuff in Olympia, I'm very familiar with destabilization. For those of you that are not, destabilization essentially, the idea behind it is make things as bad as possible, as uncomfortable as possible, for as many people as possible, and so that way it's more likely that more people are going to get up in arms and actually engage in some form of revolutionary change, which is good, right? The problem with destabilization, and the problem with that kind of approach and that tactic, and what I've been trying to put words to for a long time, is that once you create that power vacuum, once you tear down those systems, you have no control over what replaces them. And because there's been a lot of conversations and a lot of talk about the nature of the rise of things like fascism, the nature of kind of just authoritarianism and all of that stuff, and there are definitely parallels, and there's definitely some really scary stuff happening, which is deeply troubling, especially if you're following news that's coming out of Portland, just in terms of, you know, private military contractors on U.S. soil operating as government agents is a very, very concerning thing that everybody should have major issues with, because it speaks to an approach that the United States has taken in the past, but has always been much more careful and subtle about, and the fact that they're getting so overt about it is troubling. Yeah, I mean, all governments do this stuff to one degree or another. It's just the nature of how people in power maintain their power, but it's problematic, and I don't mean problematic in the way that everyone used that word for a while. I mean problematic in the terms of it is a situation that is likely to result in many problems occurring for many people. And with all of that in mind, and all of that being said, it also got me thinking about how can a system, a political system, how can something like the Nazi regime rise in the first place? And I don't think that just being dismissive of this is going to be a sustainable approach to revolution. I think that if you're going to try to really deeply change systems, then you need to look at how do we avoid sliding further towards something that resembles authoritarianism, totalitarianism, and even fascism. So in order to do that, it's kind of really important to understand how that regime was able to rise in power in the first place. A lot of different factors, of course, ton of dispossessed people that kind of felt like they got short-shifted. And to be fair, they really were. After the end of World War I, the League of Nations was really terrible in terms of Germany had all of this manufacturing capability that it basically just wasn't allowed to utilize. And it was basically told, oh, well, even though your whole economy is designed around this particular thing, you can't do it anymore. And so that left a lot of people out of work. That left a lot of people in similar situations to the situations that a lot of people are in right now. And it created a lot of unrest, and it created, you know, big problems. Now, within kind of a weird vacuum like that, that's where extremist movements kind of thrive on. And so if you look at kind of the history of 1920s Germany, because 1920s Germany is really what you need to study, because it's that golden period where it could have gone differently. There was a possibility for kind of a change or a different direction, rather than fascism, because there were really strong communist movements and socialist movements popping up all over the world. After, you know, what happened with the fall of the Russian Empire and the Tsar and everything, there were a ton of socialist movements and pushes for that kind of revolution to happen all across the country, and all across the world at large, but, you know, especially in Germany, because it was seen as a way of kind of solving many of the problems that they now faced, due to basically being overnight transformed into a different kind of economy and a different kind of country, and a less modern one. And so you had that power vacuum, and you had that destabilization happening, And, you had anarchists doing the same stuff that anarchists are doing today, of, like, when the Nazi Party started to emerge, they went after them super hard. They beat the crap out, like, they were being Nazis. Yeah, that's how it goes. And the Nazi Party still rose to power, because the nature of that power vacuum that was created by all of those different groups kind of vying for power, and because of the nature of the destabilization that happened as a result of that group turmoil and conflict, that led to the ability for people to take advantage of those power vacuums and insert themselves into positions of power. And so I guess that's my biggest, the thing that concerns me the most, or the thing that worries me the most about the nature of a destabilization approach, is that I've studied enough history. I've kind of, the things that people do with power when they get it is very, very interesting to me, because it does fundamentally change how people work. It's just, I've seen it happen in like my personal life with people that I know. When they become more or less powerful, it changes who they are as a person. I have seen it in, when I was following politics, the way that it changes somebody when they're campaigning versus when they were trying to govern. And I've seen it kind of track all across the world, especially with revolutions and uprisings and stuff like that. And the really unfortunate, I guess, kind of nature of a lot of that stuff is that when a power vacuum emerges, the people who are going to come into power are the people who are willing to do whatever it takes in order to get power. And that is fundamentally people that you never want to have it. In my experience, and from what I've seen, the people who are the most resistant and uncomfortable to the power that they're granted are the people that actually make the best rulers, and the people who seek power and kind of take advantage of situations where they're able to get more power over more people tend to be the ones that you really don't want having a bunch of power over people. So that's just my really big concern over, like, that whole destabilization approach is like I said, you can't really control what happens after you tear those systems down, or what systems rise to replace them. And especially with how wild everything is right now, it's pretty deeply concerning, because yeah, it might go an amazing way, and it might change everything up, and it might go a really, really bad way too. And so I still fundamentally gotta believe that there is a way that we don't just tear down everything at once, and that instead, I think a huge part of it is just going to be people who have these ideals, who have these beliefs, who care really, really strongly, being willing to be the insiders, being willing to get into a system and work and put in a good portion of their lives, really, to rising within that system and to trying to enact piece by piece change as best they're able to. And I think that fundamentally that's just kind of the nature of how you change systems that are made up of collections of people, is that you add more people to those systems who have a vision for those systems that you want those systems to reflect. And so I honestly think the defund movement is a really good approach that actually kind of works towards that. Especially when we talk about it more, less in terms of defund the police and more in terms of spread this funding. And I think that's kind of an important thing about political messaging, is it's because the people that I talk to, like everyone that I talk to about the idea of defunding the police, they're people who say, well, I mean, the money isn't just going to disappear, like, we defund the police to do this. And that's the important stuff. Like, that's the stuff that's super crucial, is what you do instead of the police, is increased social safety nets, increased resources to people, basically understanding the nature of why crime and the things that the police are supposed to be there to deal with the aftermath of, at least, happen in the first place. And I think at the same time, what we're going to need to do is get a lot of people involved in the current police force who want to see it change and be different. And I don't know how we can do that right now. Because, you know, I've seen plenty of people go into police and with the idea of, I'm going to change it from the inside. Like, I understand the problems here, and I still believe that it can be better. And I watch those people get burnt out so hard. And part of it is because they lose, you know, if you're constantly on alert and burning yourself out at work, then you need an amazingly strong personal support network. And because of the nature of kind of how we view those institutions now, joining the police is a really good way to lose out on a support network that is going to be also supportive of you if you're somebody who's trying to change how those systems work. So I don't know how we get there. I don't know how we get to the place where we can have people go into those systems and enact change. I think civilian oversight is a really good first step. I think increased transparency can never be a bad thing when it comes to like a government service that we all in one way or another pay for, and that is supposed to be for all of us. So civilian oversight is and should always be key and crucial. And also, I think, like, educating the public more and having more conversations, and just talking and trying to open dialogues. And that's really tricky, and that's really scary, and that's work that a lot of people can't do, and I get it. And I think that, like, you know, people who are able to do that work are the people that should be doing that work, and the people who don't feel comfortable or safe doing it shouldn't feel like they're supposed to or being asked to. And just, everyone's just so angry and so full of rage and so full of hate, and I get it, and it's not invalid. And I am ultimately somebody who cares very, very deeply and has very strong personal ideals, and at the same time, I understand that those ideals don't come before the safety and well-being of other people. Like, if I just really want to tear stuff down, I'm not going to ignore the people that could be hurt the most by that happening because I want to do it. And you know, I don't know if I'm right. It would be a lot easier if I felt like I did. But it's just something that has been really, really deeply concerning me with all of the stuff that's happening, because it's been making me go back and read that history and stuff, and the more that I've read that history, the more I'm like, whoa. It's like we're getting close to that 1920s Germany. And especially with COVID, and especially with the economic impacts that we're starting to feel, and that we're going to feel a whole lot more of, it's getting closer and closer to a very similar set of circumstances. So we need to be very, very cognizant, and we need to be cautious. And I know that's not what people want to hear right now, which is why I'm not sure if I'm going to post this. But it's so important that we try and balance that that rage and that indignation, which is righteous and which is not wrong and is not invalid, with an understanding that we exist in circumstances very, very similar to pre-Nazi Germany, and understanding that further destabilization is not going to get us to a position where we're less likely to get that way. I think fundamental systemic reform is important, and I think that reform needs to be gradual, or else we create too much of a power vacuum and too much of a shakeup, and that's how dictators rise. Yeah, sorry, it's weird. It's a weird time that we exist in right now, and like I said, this is kind of more just me trying to verbally process all of this stuff that's been bouncing around my head. And I think that's going to do it for this thing. But yeah, I'm not sure of anything, especially as I grow and as I see more stuff. I become more and more uncertain, and I love hearing other perspectives and other takes, and even if, like, they're not my takes or my perspectives, they're still really, really valuable to me, and they help me learn and grow. So if you have any thoughts or takes on this, or if you've seen things that seem to apply, I'd love to hear them. Because yeah, I'm just, stuff's getting so weird that I feel like we need to start having more open and honest conversations about how do we keep that from happening. You know what I mean? How do we keep that power vacuum that awful people can take advantage of from forming? So that's kind of gonna be it. I think I'll probably just go ahead and post this. But yeah, it's a weird time politically, y'all. It's a weird time in terms of everything. And yeah, I just hope everyone out there is staying safe, is staying well, and best wishes. Take care.